There are so many different styles of commercials you can make, so as a director, one of the first things you have to figure out is how to make sure the idea that you actually have fits the brand. So where do you start? My name is Zishan Zanani. I'm a commercial film director based out of Vancouver, Canada. I recently had the chance to direct a commercial for Blume, a skincare company started by two South Asian sisters whose products you can find at places like Sephora and Ulta. Today, I'm going to break down my process for coming up with a concept for the brand, putting together a pitch deck, storyboarding, creating a shot list, finding locations, and ultimately shooting the commercial. One of the most important things you can do is study the brand. I always start by going to their website, their social media, reading about the founders and their company mission. You want to make sure what you're about to create actually lines up with who they are as a brand. Now, in the case of Blume, what I learned is that they're all about feeling good in your own skin. So once I've had a sense of who the brand was, the next step was to find inspiration. There are so many great websites like Frameset, ShotDeck, and Film Supply, but honestly these days, most of my inspiration actually shows up on my Instagram feed. Sometimes it's a single frame that sticks with me, other times I'll see an entire commercial and love the feel. Here are some of the frames I drew inspiration from for this specific project. It's really about seeing what resonates and using it and adapting it to your case. For this Blume commercial, I knew right away that I wanted to evoke a feeling. I didn't want heavy voiceovers or dialogue, just a feel-good piece that visually spoke to what Blume is about. So the question became, how do you translate that into a commercial? Once I pulled all my inspiration, it was time for the next step. Now, sometimes the brand will reach out to you first, other times you're the one pitching. Either way, for me, the next move is always to send a pitch deck. This is where your concept really starts to take shape. You don't want to spend all your time writing and storyboarding before the brand signs off on the direction that you want to go. A pitch deck helps create a story for the client. It lets them visualize what the commercial is going to look and feel like. Now, it's important to use a lot of the brand's own colors, their words, their imagery. That's what really sells it. I usually use Canva for this process, but honestly, you can use anything, even Google Docs. The main thing here is to clearly communicate your vision. Once the client approves the pitch, I start the storyboard process. In my opinion, pre-production is the most important part of the entire job. Because this commercial was essentially a montage, a very specific shot, there wasn't really a traditional story to break down. It was more about crafting a shot list. I took all my inspiration frames and began laying out what we needed. I used Apple's Freeform app for this part, but you could use anything such as Notion or Milanote, whatever works for you. I knew I wanted this to feel very personal because skin is personal. So I was always asking myself, how do I achieve that feeling through my lens and camera choices? This isn't just a matter of sticking a product on a pedestal and lighting it with a 3-point setup. So one of the key decisions I made was shooting in a 3:2 aspect ratio, which gives you a slightly larger frame that's actually similar to the shape of a human face than the traditional 16:9. It lets us fill the frame with faces in a way that felt a little bit more intimate. That's why I decided to shoot on the Pixis 6K in open gate, which gives you that 3:2 aspect ratio. And to push that even further, we decided to shoot almost everything on the Diesel Film Artlist 100mm lens. That compression really enlarges and personalizes the image, taking advantage of that 3:2 aspect ratio. These kind of decisions are critical. As a director, you always have to step back and ask, what am I trying to make people feel and how do I achieve that with the tools that I have? Now, once my shot list was dialed in, my next job was to find locations. We knew we wanted the video to feel natural. Blume's products are soft pastel colors, so it made sense to complement that with nature instead of shooting in a traditional studio or a house. Thankfully, Vancouver is natural when it comes to stunning backdrops. It wasn't hard to find places with blue skies, water, greenery, flowers, pretty much everything that we envisioned for the look that we needed. With the shot list complete, locations secured, and models booked, it was time to shoot. We actually split the production over 2 days, one day for the models and a separate day for the product shots. It just didn't make sense to try and do everything on the same day since the shot with the models required a larger crew. Here on the first day, we started off in this forest area, which meant lugging all our gear quite a ways in. We also rented a couple EcoFlow batteries to power our lights out there. One of the toughest parts about shooting outside is dealing with the weather. Now, we mostly had overcast skies, which actually helped us allow us to shape the light the way that we wanted, but there were moments when the sun kept popping out and suddenly the entire look changed. We had the Godox 1200 by shooting through a cucullus here to help break up the light. And at one point, we literally were holding up a branch with some leaves on it just to add a little bit more texture. Now, it's the small things like this that really help elevate a shot. There are always going to be challenges. Anytime you're shooting outside, you're battling the elements. On top of that, we were a small crew and it was a weekend, so the part we picked was packed. We had to pivot on the fly from some of our original plans, but in the end, it all came together. Once we wrapped, it was time for the edit. For me, the most important part of the edit is always the music. It dictates the entire flow of the piece. I use different sites to find music, one of them being audio. I do have a referral link in my bio in case anyone is interested. For this, I wanted something high energy but still ethereal, something that captured Blume's mission of feeling good in your skin. And we didn't actually end up using every shot that we captured. That's pretty common, especially in a montage piece like this. Sometimes if you storyboard tightly enough, every shot does make it in. That just wasn't the case here, and that's okay. In the end, the client loved the edit and didn't request any revisions, which is always a win in my books. All right, thanks for watching this breakdown. I hope it was helpful. If you're another director or creative and you enjoy seeing how these projects come together, let me know. I'd be happy to keep sharing more of these in the future.